A drunken and apathetic superhero named Hancock discovers his penis is rigid. A drunken and apathetic superhero discovers his past after a PR agent tries to polish his reputation in Peter Berg's Hancock. Now, this movie came out almost a decade ago, maybe even a little bit over a decade ago. And it kind of came and went, you know? It was a Will Smith movie, so by default it made money, but people pretty much forgot it.
Joint. Get it right.
A Will Smith joint. I'm sorry. Forgive me. Oh, ye Will Smith lover. So, yeah, if you hate Will Smith like I do, you may not like this movie. But I do hate Will Smith, but I admit at times he can be a good actor. And he can be in some fun movies.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to hate on the movies. I recommended this to you. We recently saw it again. Let's talk about it. Now, I have said before that I think this movie was a little bit ahead of its time. Does that mean it's a 10 movie? No, I'm going to tell you that straight up. This is by far not a perfect movie. Has a lot of chinks in the armor, but I do think it was ahead of its time. But let's talk about it right here. Pros and cons. Let's try it for the cons first. Con number 1, the fucking soundtrack sucks! It is fucking terrible, man. This is one of the worst soundtracks you could ever force into something. They just try to be hip with everything, and it failed miserably. Now, when Ice-T can't even make your fucking movie cool, you got problems.
You talking the jazzy stuff? Because I kind of like
that.
No,
I like the jazzy stuff. I'm talking the soundtrack, not the score. The score was okay, especially the jazzy stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, that fucking soundtrack, man. You know, the soundtrack selections, the actual hits that they put. I was like,
honestly, I didn't even notice it.
Trust me, you'll notice it when you rewatch it. Every time I rewatch it, I'm like, man, the soundtrack fucking sucks. Con number 2 for me is this is a Peter Berg movie, so it has kind of like that sweaty look all the time. I don't like that look, man. He does it a lot in a lot of his movies. I haven't seen Battleship, and I never will, but I'm pretty sure that everybody's sweaty looking in it. I don't like that look. And, you know, there's kind of like a frenetic, weird, like, energy to his camera work.
And everything's really close.
Yeah. But mostly it's that you know, cinematography that just makes everything look grimy, even though it's just normal shit. I don't like that personally. That's a personal con for me. I don't know if you'll agree with that or not. It didn't make me hate the movie, but I was like, this could have benefited from a better look for sure.
I think it works with the Hancock stuff when he's a freaking hobo, but then everybody else is like, why are they slimy?
Why is everybody sweaty? Although, sweaty Charlize Theron, bring it the fuck on.
I would hit that.
I'm just saying. Yep. But, yeah, another con for me would be that fucking soundtrack, man! What the hell? I'm sorry, I know I mentioned that, but shit! It's a stinker! Yeah. Dude, the soundtrack sucks so much balls. Yeah, man. Well, hit me with some of your cons before we continue down the con road.
I kind of can't think of any.
Oh, I'll give you one. Anybody but Will Smith, well, I should say, the character was written in a way where you feel the guy should have been black. And I thought they could have just hired anybody that's not Will Smith to be this character, because Will Smith is Will Smith ultimately.
True.
So Hancock, though the character works, don't get me wrong, he works, at times just feels like Will Smith not wanting to film. Which I know the character's supposed to be apathetic and drunken and kind of hateful, you know, down in the dumps. But really at times it just feels like he doesn't want to be there.
Yeah, I guess.
I don't think he really brings forth... with somebody like, I don't know, fucking Ving Rhames. Anybody black who could have been cooler than Will Smith. Again, that's just a personal con for me. You know, I'm not a big Will Smith fan. I just feel that plenty of other actors could have done that role so much better. And, you know, because he's such a huge star, it's kind of like putting Tom Cruise in your movie. Ultimately, you just see Tom Cruise. But yeah, again, personal nitpick. And you can't think of any cons? If you do, let me know, and we'll knock on them.
The only con I have would be kind of one that goes with yours. Would be that I actually kind of liked Will Smith, but I think when he's kind of trying to turn his edge or his ways around to be a nicer man, it doesn't work as well as when he's just being a freaking hobo, in my opinion. It doesn't help that you get that really shitty suit. But they do acknowledge the shitty suit, so I can't really hold it against it. Which is why I say I can't really think of cons. I guess the soundtrack, I'll take your word on that one.
It's all god awful, man. Even some of the score selections, especially when there's like a whimsical or humorous thing going on. Like, come on, man.
I got one that goes along kind of with your cinematography thing. For me, it was a little too close at times, too close up, and during some of the action stuff, it'd be nice to see it. Especially because I think it has some pretty good effects for the time.
Yeah, for the time, for sure.
So it would have been nice to be able to see them, but I kind of get why they didn't do it that way. So again, it's kind of like an in-between.
Yeah, yeah. It's definitely a Peter Berg tick. He does a lot of those, up-close shots. But it's not to the point of hindrance, I think. So there's that. But anyway, let's talk about the pros in this. I think this movie touched upon a lot of superhero tropes in a way. Let me put it this way. It touched upon a bunch of superhero movie tropes that are now common, but back then weren't as normal as they are treated there.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So in that sense, it was kind of ahead of its time. You see elements of that movie in there, and that character. If you're familiar with comics, you'll see even more of that. And they just kind of pull all these influences into one movie. And I really like that. That's probably the biggest part I enjoyed about the movie. So that's a big pro for me. Just seeing all those elements in play.
Yeah.
Another pro is that it was nice to see a superhero movie where, the guy wasn't clean cut. The guy had issues. And I think the way they pulled off the story, and I know back then that was a big critical point against it, was people apparently hated the reason behind his superpowers and the whole link to Charlize Theron's character. Apparently, people fucking hated the shit out of that back in the day. I really enjoyed that, man. I thought that was cool. I thought that was original. It played in with a lot of concepts that I enjoy.
Yeah. Kind of a weird, almost parallel to the gods among men thing.
Yeah, yeah. In a sillier way. Yeah. I thought a lot of the comedy worked. I do think some of it was a little hokey, but the spirit of the film kind of lends way to that, and, you kind of go with it. It's one of those movies where you're just like, yeah, you know what? Fuck, man. I'll go with that. Unlike Venom, where I was like, I kind of can't go with that at the moment. This one was kind of like, fuck it. Omar Epps at the end. All right, fuck it. What the hell? Black movie, you got to have Omar Epps in it. I guess, being Omar Epps for no damn reason whatsoever. There's also really little cool things, little touches, like the way the villain, quote unquote, kind of comes out of the woodwork of Hancock's attempts to be good. Little things like that.
It's that kind of like Batman thing.
Yeah. There was touches of those elements that later became mainstays in superhero movies. And I really enjoyed that. And of course, the darker nature, despite the humor, also very cool. So all those were very, very cool positives for me. It wasn't the fucking score or the soundtrack. But anyway, well, what are some pros for you?
I think pros is that despite there being a villain, the focus isn't in the villain, and it's not a detracting thing. It's not a negative like in Marvel movies where you're like, oh man, this villain though.
Yeah.
It's like it's not the point of the movie. The villain's not the point of the movie. So he's just kind of there to fulfill plot point basically in a good way.
Yeah.
And another pro. I kind of like Jason Bateman. Just in general, I like him.
He's the bait, man.
Makes me bait nightly. Also, another pro, the guy doesn't age. Just throwing that out there. He looks the same as he
pretty
did
much.
in Arrested Development. Jason Bateman's great is what I'm saying here. I'm going to bait to him afterwards. Big pro bait.
Mm-hmm.
A pro bait.
A pro for me would be that the kid in it wasn't annoying.
Yeah.
He was actually kind of likable.
Yeah.
That's always a big problem. When you got a kid in the movie, you're like, man, is this kid going to be a piece of shit? Am I going to have to strangle a kid? You don't in this one. He's actually pretty likable.
Pro, you get to see a kid getting punched into the stratosphere.
Awesome.
Which is always great.
Whales getting thrown.
Yeah, some of the actual humor is really funny, surprisingly, but it's not it's not dumb. I was expecting this movie to be dumb. I was expecting like a Hitch type movie, like, oh, look at all the goofy shit Will Smith does.
Yeah.
Isn't he funny? But I've never seen Hitch, so I don't know. but no, it's actually surprisingly subdued, and the stuff that is funny seems like it belongs there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think overall the movie achieves its goals despite the horrid soundtrack. Another pro would be, and you mentioned this earlier in a way, is the effects hold up relatively well. Now, is that, I mean, are they going to be like top notch now as they were then? No, there's some obvious blue screen or green screen or whatever.
But this is a comedy movie.
But yeah, exactly.
So it actually looks really good for what it is.
Exactly, and that's the best way to put it. Considering this was not 100% dead serious Marvel level fucking movie.
It's not based on like
it's a comedy.
Yeah, it's not based on like some big property or anything.
Yeah, exactly. They really put a lot of money into this, and it shows on the screen, and that's good. That means in 10 years, 20 years or whatever, it'll still look relatively good, and hopefully that'll still help the story along. Upon this viewing, I still enjoy this movie quite a bit. I do think it deserves a lot more credit than it gets. That's my final thought on it. My final score on a scale of 1 to 10, again, not comparing it to Citizen Kane here, but
or Paddington.
Or Paddington, apparently. I'll give it a solid 6.5, man. This is a really fun movie. That soundtrack really knocks it down like 3 points, dude. It's a fucking shit soundtrack. I always have fun watching this movie. I can't complain. Shoot me. I would even want to give it a 7, but I don't want to give the impression that this is on the level with some fantastic shit. It's just a really fun movie.
All right. In the Will Smith scale.
On the Will Smith scale, this will get like a fucking, I don't know, like an 8.
He is on Earth.
Yeah. The 10 would be like, I don't know. I fucking care. Will Smith sucks. Yeah. But anyway, the point is, yeah. It's a really fun movie. So, it's not a bad 6.5. That's me trying to, not bring it up to a level where it's not going to compare.
It's really 7, but you hate Will Smith and that soundtrack.
That soundtrack. I'm glad there was no Will Smith tracks in the soundtrack.
Damn, dude, throwing a little Men in Black.
Shit.
10 right there. I think this movie's pretty good. I enjoyed it. If you're into comics, it's pretty neat to see the little
odes.
Yeah, he's basically Superman with a little bit of Hawkgirl and Hawkman thrown in. Maybe a little Batman with that movie thing. It was pretty neat. It was actually pretty funny. I didn't hate Will Smith in it.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say that I wish there was a little more of him being down on the dumps, but I think the amount that there was in there was just right. But I would have liked to see a little more of that, just because it was kind of fun.
To counterpoint, I know, sorry to interrupt, but subsequent times that I've watched it, I've felt the opposite in the sense, and in this sense, I felt that the beginning could be trimmed down a bit, and we should pick up with him a little bit later on. But it is fun to see that stuff, so it's kind of like
and that's the thing. This is the first time I've seen it, so I don't know how it would age.
Don't get me wrong, I enjoy it still, but yeah.
The soundtrack is apparently bad from what I hear.
Dude, that soundtrack.
I do like the jazzy stuff. That was pretty rad. Ultimately, this is a movie that was written by the guy that made Breaking Bad, so that's a thing.
Pretty weird.
That's my final thoughts on that one.
Final score?
Final score. I'll give it a 7 just because you gave it a 6.5 because of the soundtrack and Will Smith.
Yeah.
I actually kind of liked Will Smith in this. I think his down on the dumps character was way better in Suicide Squad. But here it was kind of neat to see him dipping his toe in that, I guess.
Yeah. Overall, a very fun movie. Kind of overlooked and kind of gets a bad reputation when it shouldn't, except for that soundtrack. But let us know what you think. If you hated this, revisit it. Give it another go. Maybe you'll like it now that there's been more superhero movies. You can see it in that light.
Yeah, it's better than Hitch.
Just don't buy the soundtrack. Anyway, hit like, share, subscribe. Notification buttons. We're out. Oh shit.
Did you hear your penis was erected?
Yeah. It was all floppy and shit.